Mercy in the Wilderness, a story by Mythical Tale Teller. Tekka stood in the small, dimly lit kitchen of their home, the morning sun barely spilling through the narrow window. His father sat at the table, eyes vacant, tracing invisible patterns on the worn wood. Across from him, his uncle busied himself with repairing a simple wooden tool, the faint scent of pine shavings filling the room. "I need to start training for the rite," Tekka said quietly, gripping the smooth shaft of his spear. The words felt heavy on his tongue, but they carried determination. His uncle looked up, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I know you will do well," he said warmly. He set the tool aside and leaned back slightly, eyes twinkling with a mix of pride and amusement. "Now get out of here," he added with a wink, his voice teasing but full of encouragement. Tekka returned the smile, feeling a warmth he rarely allowed himself to dwell on. He adjusted the grip on his spear, taking a deep breath as he stepped outside. The air was crisp and filled with the earthy scent of the village waking. Each step toward the training grounds carried a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. He passed familiar homes and fields, the soft murmur of villagers going about their morning echoing faintly. The spear felt like an extension of himself, a promise that he would strive to prove his worth, not just to the village, but to the small family who had always been his world. Tekka stepped onto the training grounds and immediately noticed the clamor of activity. Several boys, older and stronger than him, moved with sharp precision, their spears slicing through the air as they sparred. The sound of wood clashing against wood rang out, punctuated by shouts and laughter. "Ha! You won't be the one to catch the biggest hunt with that posture," one boy shouted, pushing his opponent backward with a swing of his spear. "I already know I will. You're all dreaming if you think otherwise," another replied, smirking as he dodged and countered. Tekka adjusted his stance and joined them, practicing his swings and thrusts, focusing on each movement. He ignored the loud banter and boasts around him, concentrating instead on the rhythm of the sparring. "Think about it," one of the boys called out as they paused for a moment. "Why should we wait for the right? We could start hunting right now. Whoever catches the biggest prey will prove they're the best." The others erupted with agreement, voices overlapping in excitement and challenge. Tekka remained silent, gripping his spear tightly, but not responding. The boys turned toward the forest edge, already imagining their first conquest, and began to move into the wilderness. Tekka hesitated only briefly before following behind, curiosity tugging at him. He wanted to see what they would find and understand the hunt in his own way, not because he sought the loud approval of the others. The trees grew thicker as they entered the shadows of the forest, the air cooler and filled with the smell of earth and foliage. Tekka walked quietly, letting the others race ahead while he took in all of the sights and smells. The boys pushed through the thick underbrush until they stumbled into a small clearing, where a young deer lay struggling on the ground. Its leg bent at an unnatural angle, and its shallow, panicked breaths rose and fell in rapid rhythm. Excited and eager to claim their prize, the boys quickly encircled it, pressing their spears against the dirt to prevent it from moving. "This one's mine," one of them said, grinning and flexing his arms. "No way! I saw it first," another barked, laughing, his chest puffing with pride. Tekka stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the trembling animal. "Stop," he said firmly, voice calm but unwavering. "Don't kill it." The boys whirled on him, faces twisted with disbelief and anger. "What are you saying?" one yelled, shoving him roughly. "It's trapped. We're supposed to—" Ignoring their protests, Tekka crouched slightly and guided the deer toward a narrow opening between the trees. The animal stumbled uncertainly but found its freedom, disappearing into the shadows before the boys could react. The boys erupted in shouts and jeers, pushing and shoving him. "You're such a coward!" one spat, jabbing a finger toward him. "You'll never be worthy of being called a man." Their anger faded when they suddenly noticed someone at the training grounds, just barely visible from where they stood. Zaru stepped lightly into view, sunlight glinting on her long, dark hair, which fell in soft waves past her shoulders. Her skin glowed with warmth, catching the light in a way that made it seem almost luminous. Her eyes were clear and steady, reflecting the forest around her with a depth that made the boys pause, unsure where to look. The gentle slope of her cheeks and the subtle curve of her lips formed a serene smile, soft and unassuming, yet it carried a quiet strength that silenced the boys instantly. The boys practically ran back through the forest, pushing past one another, eager to reach Zaru. Tekka followed at a slower pace, careful not to get in the way, his eyes quietly taking in the scene. As they reached the training grounds, the boys' excitement turned to curiosity and then to scheming smiles. "So, she's the one assigned to us?" one said, nudging another. "She's supposed to help us while we train," another added, eyes darting toward Zaru. Zaru stood quietly near the edge of the training grounds, her movements measured and graceful. The boys swarmed toward her, voices loud, shoving and teasing, each one trying to draw her attention to himself. "Give me some water," one demanded. "I'm parched," another said, leaning too close. Despite their antics, she remained composed. She handed them water when asked, prepared simple food for them, and endured their persistent teasing without raising her voice or showing anger. Even when they nudged her or tried to flirt openly, she tolerated it with a humble patience, bowing slightly as she moved among them. "Come on, don't be shy," one of the boys said, leaning closer with a grin. Zaru only offered a soft smile, handing him a piece of dried meat without a word. She did not provoke them, did not scold them, and simply continued her work, ensuring each boy had what he needed. The boys, emboldened by her quiet compliance, continued to press and tease, but her calm, gentle demeanor kept the situation from spiraling completely out of control. Tekka watched from a short distance, noting the stark contrast between the chaos of the boys and the quiet, steady presence of Zaru. Tekka hung back as the other boys crowded around Zaru, elbowing and jostling for her attention. He did not push, did not shove, and did not join their teasing. When she approached him with a cup of water, moving carefully through the chaos, he accepted it with both hands, bowing his head slightly. "Thank you," he said quietly, his voice calm and sincere. Zaru froze for a heartbeat, her eyes widening just enough to betray surprise. She had grown accustomed to the crude boasting and demands of the other boys, but this, the quiet, respectful acknowledgement, caught her off guard. Her lips parted slightly, a small flicker of warmth brushing across her face as she processed the difference. The corners of her mouth lifted in a subtle, genuine smile, delicate and unforced. It reached her eyes, softening the tension she had carried all day, and revealing a small, unguarded part of herself that he had never seen in her before. Tekka noticed immediately that it was unlike the polite, practiced expressions she had offered the other boys. As the sun sank lower in the sky, shadows stretching long across the village, the sharp clang of the village bell rang out, slicing through the evening air. Its urgent, metallic peal echoed from house to house, drawing the villagers from their homes. From the distant tree line came low, guttural growls and rustling movement as a pack of wolves emerged from the wilderness. Their eyes glinted with a cold, predatory light, teeth bared in snarls, and their fur bristled along their spines. Muscles rippled beneath matted dark coats as they moved with silent, calculated precision, each step deliberate and terrifying. Men grabbed spears and torches, faces tight with resolve, while the women hurried behind them, carrying firewood and supplies to help defend the livestock. Tekka, standing at the edge of the village, gripped his spear tightly, feeling the weight of responsibility settle across his shoulders. The wolves circled the pens where sheep and goats bleated in panic. Their low, menacing growls vibrated through the air, and occasional flashes of fangs and glowing eyes made the villagers' hearts pound. Flames flickered as torches were thrust toward the pack, and spears struck at the wolves. But the animals moved with unnerving speed and intelligence, lunging and retreating, testing the villagers at every step. One by one, the wolves were driven back into the shadows, retreating into the forest as the villagers pressed their advantage. Breathing heavily, the men counted their livestock, and relief rippled through them, almost complete. Then, a collective gasp broke the moment. A lone sheep had been dragged beyond the pens, disappearing into the darkness of the trees. The village leader's voice cut through the murmurs of the crowd. "Do not follow," he ordered, sharp and firm. "The wilderness is theirs at night. We cannot risk more lives for a single animal." Reluctantly, the villagers stepped back, torches raised but unmoving, their eyes following the faint trail into the dark forest. The pack's growls had vanished, leaving only the distant, eerie rustle of leaves. Tekka lowered his spear, heart heavy, knowing that one small life had been claimed by the night and the untamed wild beyond their village. The next morning, the village square was alive with tension, the air thick and heavy, carrying the mingled scents of damp earth, smoke from early fires, and the faint tang of sweat. Villagers pressed together, their faces taut with worry, anticipation, and an underlying fear. Children perched on fence posts and rooftops, eyes wide and hearts pounding, while parents whispered hurriedly to one another, worry etched into every line of their faces. Some of the older men's hands trembled as they gripped their staffs, recalling their own trials in years past, and the women clutched their shawls as if the cloth alone could shield them from what was to come. At the center, the boys stood in a rough line, their spears held tight. Their breaths came uneven, a mixture of excitement, fear, and pride coursing through them. Some exchanged nervous glances, the weight of expectation pressing on their young shoulders. Others tried to appear confident, straightening their backs, but the tight set of their jaws betrayed the tension they felt. Tekka stood slightly apart, calm and steady, yet even he could feel the weight of every eye on him, the silent judgment of a village that demanded proof of strength. The village leader stepped onto the raised platform, his heavy cloak brushing against the wooden boards. The crowd fell into a hushed silence the moment he opened his mouth. His gaze swept the square with an authority that made the heart beat faster in the chest of anyone who met it. "Listen well," he said, his voice deep and commanding, echoing across the packed village square. "For too long, wolves have plagued our lands. They have killed our livestock, destroyed our food stores, and threatened the survival of every family here." His eyes narrowed, sweeping over the boys before him, lingering just long enough to make each one feel the weight of responsibility. "Last night, one of our sheep was dragged into the wilderness by these creatures. That animal's life will not go unavenged." A shiver passed through the crowd. Mothers clutched their children closer, fathers exhaled through clenched teeth. The boys stiffened, knuckles whitening on their spears, stomachs twisting with a mix of dread and determination. Tekka's heart beat steadily, a quiet resolve settling over him even as adrenaline prickled along his skin. "To be recognized as men of this village," the leader continued, voice sharp and unwavering, "you must hunt these wolves. You must work together as they do, in a pack. Only through unity, skill, and cunning will you survive and succeed." He let the words hang, heavy in the morning air, and the boys felt them sink in, the enormity of the task pressing down on their young hearts. "When you return," the leader said, voice low and solemn, "each of you must wear the coats of the wolves you have hunted. Only then will the village acknowledge you as men. Fail, and your names will be remembered for weakness." A ripple of emotion spread through the square. Some of the boys' stomachs churned with fear, imagining the teeth and ferocity of the wolves, the weight of responsibility, and the shame of failure. Others' hearts soared with pride and adrenaline, ready to prove themselves. Parents exchanged anxious glances, hope and fear warring in their expressions, while children clutched one another, trying to understand the danger that loomed beyond the village. The weight of expectation was almost tangible. Every face in the square, young and old alike, reflected the stakes of the rite. For the boys, this was more than a challenge. It was a test of courage, of heart, and of their place in the village. For the villagers, it was a moment of collective fear, hope, and longing, a reminder of how fragile life could be when the wilderness itself seemed to rise against them. Tekka drew a slow breath, letting the tension settle into determination. Around him, the square hummed with nervous energy, the first true trial of the day, poised to begin, shaping not only the boys' futures but the heartbeat of the entire village. The boys lined up in the clearing as Zaru moved among them, small brushes in hand and containers of dark pigment ready. One by one, she traced sharp, deliberate lines across their cheeks and foreheads, the strokes forming patterns meant to mark them as hunters. Her movements were careful, precise, yet gentle, a quiet contrast to the nervous energy buzzing through the boys. When she reached Tekka, her hand paused for a moment over his face. He met her eyes, and she leaned closer, brushing the pigment along his cheek. Her voice was a soft whisper, almost lost in the rustle of the crowd. "Good luck," she said, her words meant only for him. Tekka felt a warmth in his chest at the private acknowledgement, a quiet reassurance that settled over him even as the weight of the coming trial pressed down. With the markings complete, the boys took off together into the edge of the wilderness, spears at the ready, their shouts and laughter fading behind them. At first, Tekka ran with them, matching their pace, though a quiet unease lingered in his chest. As the trees thickened and the village faded from view, the boys slowed, then suddenly shoved him aside. "You're weak," one spat, jabbing a finger at his chest. "We're not hunting with you. Go be a boy for the rest of your life." Tekka's chest tightened, but he did not respond. He watched them sprint ahead, their shadows swallowed by the forest. With a deep breath, he turned and stepped into the wilderness alone, the uncertainty gnawing at him. How could he face a pack of wolves by himself? He moved cautiously, listening to the forest around him. Soon, he spotted a fresh set of tracks pressed into the soft earth, wolf tracks. Heart quickening, he followed them, keeping low and moving with slow, careful steps. The forest grew darker, the sounds of leaves and snapping twigs marking his progress. He glimpsed a gray shape moving ahead, cautious and sleek. Tekka stalked it, careful to stay downwind, muscles tense and ready. Finally, the wolf paused, and Tekka saw his opportunity. He lunged forward, spear raised, but the animal twisted and darted away, agile and fast. Tekka bolted after it, heart hammering, legs burning as he ran. For what felt like hours, he followed the wolf through thick brush and over uneven ground, until finally, the creature stumbled into a narrow ravine. Its path was blocked by fallen trees and rocks, and it had nowhere left to go. Tekka slowed, lowering his spear, breathing hard as he realized the wolf was trapped, caught in a space where he could confront it. Tekka crouched low, every muscle coiled like a spring, eyes locked on the wolf as it moved through the narrow ravine. Its fur was dark against the forest floor, bristling along its spine, eyes glinting with sharp intelligence. The wolf paused, sniffing the air, its body tense, ears swiveling at the faintest sound. Tekka felt his pulse hammer in his chest, each beat echoing in his ears. When the moment came, he lunged forward, spear aimed for the wolf's flank. The animal twisted with impossible speed, a flash of gray slipping through the shadows, teeth bared in a snarl as it vanished into the underbrush. Tekka's heart leapt and sank all at once, the gap between them tightening like a living thing, and he bolted after it. The forest became a blur of trees and roots, the undergrowth clawing at his legs as he pushed himself harder than ever before. He stumbled over hidden roots, nearly falling, but caught himself and surged forward again, breath ragged, muscles screaming in protest. The wolf weaved through the thick brush, cunning and agile, testing Tekka with every bound. Panic and determination churned together in his chest. Finally, the wolf stumbled into a small clearing, trapped against a barrier of fallen branches and jagged rocks. It turned to face him, eyes bright and alert, hackles raised, teeth glinting in the dim light. Tekka froze, spear trembling in his hands. He could feel the raw power of the animal before him, the tension coiling in its body like a spring ready to strike. He raised the spear, muscles taut, ready to deliver the final blow. His chest heaved, adrenaline burning through him, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just him And the wolf. Then his mind flashed to the deer, trapped and helpless, and the memory of the boys' shouts and jeers as they had tried to kill it. He realized that in striking this wolf, he would become no different than them, carrying the same cruelty, the same blind desire to prove himself at the expense of another life. Teka's hands shook. Slowly, he lowered the spear, heart pounding in his ears, sweat stinging his eyes. The wolf watched him, muscles still tense, eyes fixed, and then, with a sudden fluid motion, it slipped through a narrow gap in the rocks and melted into the forest, leaving only the soft rustle of leaves behind. Teka sank to his knees, chest heaving, spear slipping from his hands. A rush of conflicting emotions crashed over him: relief, sorrow, fear, and a quiet, resolute pride. He knew the choice would cost him the village's approval. He would not be recognized as a man, and he would disappoint his father and uncle. The weight of that truth pressed against him, but beneath it was a strange, steady calm. Rising slowly, he brushed dirt and sweat from his hands, muscles still trembling from the chase. The forest around him seemed alive and silent at once, the shadows deep and oppressive. Yet Teka stepped forward, gripping his spear with renewed purpose, and began the long trek back toward the village, accepting fully the path he had chosen and the consequences that awaited him. Teka knelt at the edge of a narrow river, the cool water rushing past his hands as he carefully caught several fish, their slippery bodies wriggling against his grip. The sun was low in the sky, casting long golden streaks across the water, and the sound of the current mingled with the distant calls of birds settling in for the evening. After gathering enough fish, he set up a small camp on a flat patch of ground nearby, arranging stones into a makeshift fire pit and striking flint to coax sparks into flame. The fish sizzled over the fire, filling the air with a rich, smoky aroma. As he worked, a sudden movement at the edge of the trees caught his attention. He froze and blinked. The same wolf he had spared earlier stood there, its eyes bright and curious, ears perked forward. Its body was relaxed, and there was no hint of aggression. Teka remained still for a moment, unsure of what to do, then broke off a piece of cooked fish and held it out. The wolf padded forward cautiously, sniffed the offering, and then took it gently from his hand. Its tail wagged slightly, and it nudged him playfully with its nose. Teka laughed softly, a sound full of relief and wonder, realizing that the wolf was friendly, even playful. He spent a little time tossing small pieces of fish toward the wolf, who chased and caught them with quick, precise movements. For the first time since the hunt had begun, Teka felt a sense of calm and companionship, a bond forming in the quiet of the forest. As night approached, Teka packed up his camp and began walking back toward the village, the wolf padding along beside him without hesitation. With every step, he thought about the villagers and the way they feared the wolves. Perhaps, he considered, there was a different path, one where humans could coexist with the animals instead of hunting them. The thought stirred a new hope within him, a vision of a future where understanding and respect might replace fear and violence. Teka slowed as he neared the edge of the village, the familiar shapes of huts and fences coming into view. A soft sound of splashing water drew his attention, and he saw Zaru kneeling at a shallow stream, cupping water to her face. Sunlight caught her dark hair, making it shimmer like silk, and her skin glowed in the warm light. Her eyes, deep and reflective, held a quiet intensity that made her seem almost otherworldly. Even in the simple act of drawing water, her movements were graceful and deliberate, and her presence seemed to draw the forest and sunlight into her orbit. "Zaru!" Teka called gently as he stepped closer, the wolf padding silently beside him. The moment she looked up and saw both him and the wolf, her eyes widened in terror. A sharp, instinctive scream escaped her lips, and she scrambled backward, tripping over a fallen branch. Teka's heart raced as he lunged forward and caught her in his arms before she could fall, holding her steady. "Wait," he said calmly, keeping his voice soft but firm. "It's okay. It's friendly." Zaru's chest heaved as she stared at the wolf, her fear battling with curiosity. Tekka slowly lowered one hand, letting the wolf approach. Its eyes were bright and gentle, tail swishing in slow, playful movements. The animal sniffed Zaru cautiously, and she froze, unsure whether to trust it. "See?" Tekka said quietly. "It won't hurt you." Zaru studied the wolf for a moment, fingers rising slowly, as if she wanted to reach out. "I've always wondered what its fur feels like," she admitted softly, almost to herself. "I've never been this close to a wolf before." Tekka nodded, understanding. "It's soft and warm, but strong too. They're built to survive in the wild." The wolf nuzzled her hand gently. "I think he likes you." Zaru's lips curved in a small smile as she stroked the fur, feeling the texture under her fingers. "It's different from anything I imagined." The wolf nudged her hand again, tail wagging, and she laughed softly, a sound full of wonder. Tekka crouched beside her, watching with a small smile. "Does it play often?" she asked, her curiosity evident. "Sometimes," Tekka said. "They're kind of like us in a way. They have their own community and relationships with each other." Zaru continued to stroke the wolf, gentle and tentative at first, then with growing confidence. "Really? I would love to learn more about them." "Me too," Tekka said, smiling. "It's amazing to be this close to something so wild and free." For a long moment, they lingered there together, Zaru brushing the wolf's fur and Tekka watching, both of them discovering a quiet connection with the animal and the forest around them. The rustle of hurried footsteps through the underbrush reached Tekka's ears first, followed by the low murmur of voices. Men from the village were approaching, torches and spears in hand, their expressions tense and wary. Behind them, the women followed, anxious and watchful, drawn by the scream that had cut through the quiet evening. Tekka stepped protectively in front of the wolf as the villagers reached the clearing. Their eyes widened at the sight of it, sharp teeth bared and body tense, and a collective murmur of alarm ran through the crowd. "Kill it!" one of the men shouted, raising his spear. Others followed, shouting in agreement, some stepping forward to strike. "No!" Tekka shouted, stepping forward to block them. "It's not dangerous. It's friendly. You don't have to fight it. Maybe there's a way to befriend the wolves instead of hunting them." The villagers hesitated for a heartbeat, but the leader's glare cut through the air like fire. "You betray the village," he growled. "You disobey our ways and put yourself and others at risk. You are no longer one of us." Tekka felt the weight of the words, the judgment and anger of everyone around him pressing down. I just want to show that we can live with them," he said, voice steady despite the fear twisting in his chest. The leader slammed a hand against a wooden post nearby, drawing the attention of everyone. "Hear me clearly," he barked. "If you or this animal step near the village again, you will both be killed. You are cast out, and your name will never be spoken in this place again." A hush fell over the crowd. Some of the villagers muttered among themselves, fear and disbelief mingling in their eyes, but none dared speak. Tekka's uncle stood among the villagers, arms crossed, face stern, appearing to side with the crowd. His voice, soft and almost hidden beneath the murmurs of the others, said, "You've changed." Tekka's heart sank slightly as he heard the words, but before he could fully process what was happening, his uncle winked and gave a slight smile before hiding it immediately after. "Now get out of here." The villagers began to turn and make their way back toward the village, torches flickering in the growing darkness, their murmurs fading into the night. Tekka stayed with the wolf, standing a few steps away from Zaru, who lingered near the stream, her hands still brushing the animal's fur. Zaru's mother stepped forward, her face tight with anger and disbelief. "Zaru, come back now," she ordered, voice sharp. "Leave him and return to the village. You have much more to do there." Zaru's gaze shifted between her mother and Tekka. Her chest rose and fell, hesitant, but then she straightened, lifting her chin with quiet resolve. "No," she said firmly, forcing herself to speak the word that had been building inside her. A stunned hush fell over the villagers. Many of them paused, glancing back to watch the exchange, whispers spreading through the crowd like wildfire. Zaru's mother's eyes widened in disbelief. "You will return this instant!" she commanded, her voice rising with fury. Zaru's lips pressed together, but her eyes did not waver. "No," she repeated, her voice stronger this time. "I am done serving the village, if it means I have to be someone I am not. I would rather live true to myself, with Tekka, who accepts me for who I am." Her mother's face twisted with anger and shame. "You will regret this!" she spat, her voice trembling with rage and disbelief. "You are a disappointment! You are cast out! Just like him, then!" Zaru held her ground, shoulders steady, her eyes meeting Tekka's. In that moment, the weight of the village's expectations and the chains of falsehood fell away. She was free, even if it meant leaving everything she had known behind. The villagers, murmuring among themselves, watched in silence as mother and daughter faced each other, the air thick with tension and the sharp sting of rejection. With a deep breath, Zaru stepped closer to Tekka, the wolf brushing alongside them, and together they turned away from the village, leaving behind the life they had been forced to live. Tekka, Zaru, and the wolf moved steadily through the forest, leaving the flickering lights of the village behind. The air was crisp, filled with the earthy scent of pine and soil, and the sounds of the wilderness surrounded them, the distant calls of birds, the rustle of leaves under their feet, and the soft padding of the wolf beside them. They walked for hours, following winding paths through dense woods and open meadows, until the forest opened into a breathtaking clearing. Sunlight poured down in warm shafts, glinting off a gentle stream that wound through the valley. Wildflowers dotted the grassy slopes, and the air was alive with the hum of insects and the distant rush of water over rocks. The place seemed untouched, a hidden sanctuary far from the rules and judgments of the village. Tekka knelt beside the wolf, brushing his hand over its thick fur as it rolled playfully on the grass. Zaru watched them both, a soft smile spreading across her face, eyes reflecting the golden sunlight. She stepped closer to Tekka and reached out, taking his hand in hers. "This could be our place," Tekka said quietly, voice full of hope. Zaru nodded, her gaze sweeping over the valley, the water, and the wild expanse surrounding them. "A place where we can be ourselves," she said, "and where animals can live freely too." The wolf bounded ahead, chasing a fluttering butterfly, and they laughed, the sound blending with the life around them. Together, they began to explore, claiming the clearing as their own. With the village far behind them, Tekka and Zaru felt the weight of expectations lift, replaced by a sense of possibility and freedom. Here, in this hidden corner of the world, they could live on their own terms, in harmony with each other and with the animals that shared the land. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a warm glow over the valley as the three of them walked forward, stepping into a new life, untethered and alive.